The iPhone SE came out 8 years ago. That's right, in 8 years we went from this to this. But does a phone being 8 years old mean that you can't do everything you want a phone to do? Well, for $8, I decided to test what the original iPhone SE from 2016 is like in 2024. They say not to judge a book by its cover, so what's on the inside of this little iPhone? Well, we have an Apple A9 SoC, the same processor seen in the iPhone 6s, and if you don't know, the iPhone SE first generation is just an iPhone 6s and a 5s's body. To complement that, we have 2 gigs of RAM, and in this model we have 16 gigs of storage, although that could go all the way up to 128 gigs. And that 16 gigs of storage is about enough to store the entire script of this video. To power this enthusiast grade device, we have a 1624 mAh battery, at least when it was new. This thing is 8 years old, and that battery is not at full capacity, but the one in my specific example is not too damaged and is still perfectly usable. And that whole thing about don't judge a book by its cover, yeah, we're throwing that one out the window now and taking a look at this thing's ugly cover. So this is a small phone. How small exactly? 4 inches. Now I know that some of you are saying that 4 inches is plenty, but even though the screen is Retina with a 326 ppi, that is just not enough for most modern apps or websites. Things get cramped and weirdly formatted. Ordering McDonald's becomes massively awkward. Supporting the small screen, we have bezels that are thick with 3 C's as well as a home button. And this is not the awful haptic home button that is on anything newer than the iPhone 6s. That's right, I said it. I don't think Apple's haptics are better than having physical movement. And if you agree with that, you should probably leave a like and subscribe. Shameless plug aside, let's talk a little more about that home button. Touch ID is here, but it's not in the same tier as the iPhone 6s. While the 6s has a second-gen Touch ID, the SE did not get that feature, meaning that we get the slower standard that was introduced with the 5s. Granted, this is still plenty fast, it's just one of the subtle ways Apple cut costs on this phone. So that's enough about the front of the phone. What do we have on the bottom? We have a Lightning port and a 3.5mm headphone jack. Lightning is a dead horse that people have been beating for years, but at the end of the day, you can still buy a brand new iPhone on the Apple website using the Lightning connector, meaning the iPhone SE is still technically up to date. But you know what you can't get on any new iPhone that Apple sells? A 3.5mm headphone jack. You can't even get an iPod with it anymore. So I'm calling this an absolute win because I can still use my iPod Nano 2nd gen earbuds with this like it's 2007. Something I noticed about the exterior of this phone while shooting B-roll was that this thing has a rounded frame. You mean to tell me that I have to put up with MacBooks cutting open my wrists, but the budget iPhone doesn't do that? Come on Apple, please just put this on MacBooks. Now how about we take a look at the rear of the phone? Well, other than this lovely two-tone design, we have the rear camera. The iPhone SE from 2016 has the same resolution rear camera as the iPhone 14 at 12 megapixels. That's right, the 8-year-old phone has the same resolution camera as last year's flagship. Why do we bother buying new phones? Oh right, the dynamic island. With that 12 megapixel camera, we get 4K 30fps video capture, up to 720p 240fps slow motion for making awful skateboard montages, and HDR pictures that do have a mildly better range than non-HDR pictures. Also, fun fact, it was this exact iPhone that I used to take the profile picture for this channel. Now while rear cameras haven't improved that much, selfie cameras sure have. The iPhone SE features a 1.2 megapixel selfie camera, and the quality looks like you left the plastic peel on your phone screen, it's massively humid outside, and you put 8 pounds of foundation on. But if you're ugly like yours truly, it does make you look like a beauty guru. Enough about specs. What is this phone like to actually use? Well, given that this and the iPhone 6s were the longest supported phones of all time, we're actually only one major iOS update behind, but this phone still gets security patches. I may be an Android diehard, but even I can't argue with that level of support. And due to the phone still being fairly up to date, it means that you can still get almost any app you could possibly want. This was proven as my brother's Pixel 5a killed itself for the second time and he had to use this phone for a week. Despite battery life not holding up too well, he could really do anything he wanted to. And we don't have an iPhone 4 situation where the phone got updated to the point of being basically unusable. This phone is still relatively snappy in a way that I would not expect. Web browsing feels fine, apps are responsive and open in a reasonable amount of time, and you can text people if you have friends. This thing feels better to use than some of the budget Android phones I've used in the past that were brand new. Given that the phone is still responsive and has good app support, if you have one of the larger storage options, I genuinely think you could daily drive this thing in 2024. And speaking of daily driving, let's actually test this phone with some daily scenarios. First, in terms of synthetics, we see a Geekbench 6 single-core score of 608 and a multi-core score of 805, making this roughly as powerful as a 2011 MacBook Air. I don't know if that speaks to how bad the MacBook is, or how solid the iPhone SE is, you be the judge. But who cares what Geekbench says? I want to know what it's like with an actual task. If this was a laptop, or a desktop, or even an Android phone, I would put some games people actually like on here and test them. But this is a 16GB phone, and I own no games on iOS, so I only have one gaming test, but it's important. I download Survival Craft, everybody's favorite Minecraft ripoff, and it runs great. The game automatically set itself to the highest settings, and on a new world, there are no issues. It's smooth, and I think the only disappointment you'd be left with is the fact that you're not actually playing Minecraft. So would I recommend the iPhone SE in 2024? Honestly, even though this thing is still good to use and dirt cheap, I got mine for $8. I cannot recommend it if you don't already have one. If you have your old one and need a backup phone, it's fine. But if you need an actual phone, this is not your answer. You're not going to get any new updates, and apps are just slowly going to be removed and lose support. Instead, if you really want to have an iPhone, I'd try to up the budget and move up to the 2nd Gen SE, which can be purchased for less than $100 and is still updated, and it's bigger, making it more usable. And that's basically as cheap as you can go. If you want something Android, you can get an S20 FE or a Pixel 6a for around the same $100 mark. Now, if you enjoyed this video, leaving a like and subscribing would be greatly appreciated and would help more people find the channel, and weekly random tech videos are what I do here. Also, if you have any future video ideas or something to add on the iPhone SE, leave a comment below and let me know. Now I'm Jaxon the Nerd, and I'll see you next Monday. Hopefully.